There comes a moment in certain people's lives when silence stops being restful. It transforms into a destination. Have you noticed this happening to you? That feeling that being alone has become a permanent condition. Something you defend tooth and nail. Maybe you tell yourself that you've matured, that you've finally figured out how the world works. But is this absolute independence really freedom? Or have you built a prison so comfortable that you forgot you're still locked inside? I know that's hard to hear, especially if you've spent years protecting yourself from people who hurt you. But what I'm going to show you here goes beyond a critique of your choice. It's an invitation to look honestly at the cost of that decision. Most people who embrace solitude as a life philosophy weren't born that way. Something happened. A betrayal that completely rewired how you see trust. A disappointment that taught you, in a brutal way, that expecting anything from others is a direct path to suffering. Maybe it was one single deep wound, the kind that changes who you are on the inside. Or maybe it was a series of small fractures that, over time, cracked your willingness to connect. There's a fundamental difference between recognizing that solitude can bring a certain greatness and turning it into a metal that justifies not trying anymore. I completely understand when you look back and see a repeating pattern. People who promised and failed. People who got close only to hurt you. People who seemed different until the moment they revealed themselves to be just like everyone else. An unhealed wound turns into an automatic defense pattern. Your nervous system learned a painful lesson. Now it applies that lesson to any situation that shows the slightest sign of risk. You're mistaken if you think this is weakness. The truth is, it's your body's intelligence trying to protect you. But the body's intelligence doesn't always serve the deeper purposes of the soul. When you finally pulled away from everything and everyone, there was genuine relief. I'm not saying this to make you anxious, but to wake you up. That relief was absolutely real. The constant drama draining your energy stopped. The messages that left you anxious. The corrosive expectation that someone will disappoint you at any moment. The silence brought a peace you hadn't felt in a long time. It was like background noise you didn't even know existed had finally been switched off. You could think clearly for the first time in ages. You could sleep properly. You could simply exist without that permanent tension of managing relationships that demanded more than they offered. It's completely valid to feel that relief. Silence can genuinely be restorative for a mind saturated with conflict. The problem starts when you confuse rest with permanent escape. When the necessary pause for recovery turns into an exile with no end date. No one warned you that there's a crucial difference between withdrawing to recover and hiding to never face things again. Over time, something interesting and dangerous happens inside you. Solitude stops being a passing circumstance. It becomes a central part of your identity. You start defining yourself by it, building your entire personality around this choice. I don't need anyone. I'm completely self-sufficient. I learned to be enough on my own. These phrases stop being descriptions of your current state. They become statements of principle, almost a personal manifesto. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote about this in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He described the solitude of the elevated spirit as necessary for those seeking to become what they truly are in their essence. But Nietzsche himself warned about a specific danger that many ignore. Whoever flees from men out of contempt is progressively weakening themselves. The fortress you build to protect yourself from the world is the same one that prevents you from growing. There's a silent pride in not needing anyone, a subtle sense of superiority that permeates your thoughts. You look at the people around you, with their complicated relationships and emotional dependencies, and feel you've evolved beyond all that you've reached a stage they haven't achieved yet. It might even seem like clarity, but it's actually an illusion that isolation allows you to keep intact. Precisely because there's no one around to confront it with reality. Carl Jung devoted a large part of his work to a fundamental idea. An idea that should unsettle anyone who chose permanent solitude. A human being only truly knows themselves through encounter with another. The other acts as a mirror to the psyche. It reflects aspects of ourselves that would otherwise remain invisible. Without that mirror, whole parts of who you really are stay hidden. Even from yourself, you develop a self-image that no one questions. Because there's simply no one around to question anything. And this self-image, over time, becomes more and more distorted, more and more removed from reality. You believe you know yourself deeply, more than anyone could ever know you. But in truth, You only know the version of yourself that exists in the complete absence of human friction. And that version isn't the real you. It's just the comfortable shadow of who you could be if you had the courage to expose yourself again. There's an important concept in psychology: the shadow. Everything we repress, deny, or simply don't recognize in ourselves doesn't disappear. It goes to a psychic territory where it continues to exist. It continues to influence our behavior in ways we don't perceive. Under normal conditions of social interaction, the presence of other people forces us to confront aspects of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Someone irritates you deeply in a disproportionate way. If you're brutally honest, you'll notice that irritation often reveals something about you. Someone disappoints you unexpectedly. In the sharp pain of that disappointment, you discover expectations you didn't even know you carried. In prolonged solitude, this confrontation simply doesn't happen. The shadow grows silently, fueled by the absence of external mirrors forcing you to see it. Clearly, destructive behaviors disguise themselves as healthy self-preservation. You become more rigid, more critical, more bitter. And you don't notice this transformation because there's no one to show you. Solitude allows you to build a narrative about yourself that is never tested by reality. And every narrative that is never tested eventually turns into convenient fiction. There's a phenomenon that happens so gradually you barely notice it. The heart hardens, layer by layer, day after day. You start losing the ability to feel genuine empathy. Other people's stories of pain that once moved you now seem distant, almost abstract. The joy of others seems superficial to you, sometimes even annoying. You tell yourself, this is discernment, that you've learned not to be affected by things that aren't your concern. But the truth is simpler and more brutal. The heart that closes to avoid pain also closes to joy. You know that cup of coffee you forget on the table while working? When you notice, it's gone cold. You can still drink it, but it's not the same. The warmth is gone. The flavor has changed. And the worst part, it happened so slowly you didn't even see it. That's how it works with the heart of someone who's lived isolated for too long. The capacity to feel slowly cools down. By the time you notice, if you ever do, you no longer feel things the same way. The heart has reasons that reason itself doesn't know. When you spend too much time in solitude, these reasons atrophy from lack of use. What was temporary protection becomes a permanent wall, one you can no longer tear down even if you wanted to. And you stop feeling. Life becomes a sequence of days that pass without truly touching you. You function, you produce, you exist technically, but something essential got lost along the way. Cynicism becomes the unofficial philosophy of those in prolonged isolation, a lens through which you start seeing all of reality. You begin to see all human relationships as fundamentally transactional, exchanges where each party seeks only their own benefit. Every kindness hides a hidden agenda. Every approach is manipulation in disguise. Every display of affection is a calculated investment expecting a return. You look at couples on the street and think, it's just a matter of time. You see old friendships and imagine, one day one will betray the other. Distrust becomes your default mode of operating in the world. There's an important difference between two types of distrust. Healthy skepticism questions to find a deeper truth. Bitter nihilism destroys any possibility of belief. The first builds something new from the ruins. The second just demolishes and leaves rubble behind. When you spend too much time alone, bitter nihilism presents itself as hard-won wisdom. You convince yourself that you finally see the world as it really is. A place where everyone wants something in return, where no one is genuine, where the only person you can count on is yourself. No. This isn't clarity of vision, it's deep distortion. From someone looking at the world through a window fogged by their own pain, and mistaking the fog for reality. You chose solitude to find peace, and you found something that seemed like peace for a while. But there's a cruel paradox no one told you about. As months turn into years of isolation, a void begins to form at the center of your experience. At first, it's almost imperceptible, easy to ignore or rationalize. A vague restlessness at specific moments, a diffuse feeling that something is missing, even if you can't name what it is. You try to fill it with work, with hobbies, with consumption. But nothing really works. The silence that was once restorative starts to weigh differently. It's no longer deserved rest. It's an absence that hurts in ways you didn't expect. There's a silence that heals wounds, and another that deepens them. The first is temporary and intentional, chosen with a specific purpose. You withdraw to recover from genuine exhaustion, to reflect on important experiences, to reconnect with your own inner voice. Then, when recovery happens, you return to the world renewed and stronger. The second type of silence is permanent and purely reactive, a defensive response that crystallized. You hide because the world hurt you, and you decided you won't give it another chance. The difference between the two isn't the amount of time you spend alone, it's the direction. One leads you back to a full life, the other pulls you away from it. A little more each day. Deep down in your motivations, if you're completely honest, chronic solitude is an attempt to control pain by rigidly controlling the environment. If there are no people, there's no risk of disappointment. Without connection, betrayal is impossible. Zero expectation in anyone means zero frustration when nothing is fulfilled. The logic is seemingly flawless, almost mathematical in its precision. And that's exactly why it's such an effective trap. Because human life doesn't work by systematically eliminating risks. Completely avoiding the anxiety that every genuine connection brings is avoiding the very experience of being alive. Absolute control over who enters and leaves your existence isn't real power. It might even look like an imposing castle, but it's actually a prison you built with your own hands. You are both the prisoner suffering the confinement and the jailer imposing the rules. The cruel irony of this situation? You can leave anytime. The door isn't locked from the outside, but you've convinced yourself so completely that outside is worse that you don't even try anymore. Your body knows something fundamental that your conscious mind tries to ignore. Neuroscience and psychophysiology studies show that prolonged social isolation alters the very biology of the organism. The nervous system of someone living in chronic solitude remains in a subtle but constant state of alert, as if danger were always imminent. Sleep fragments in ways you don't always notice. You wake up tired without understanding why. Inflammatory markers in the blood rise with no apparent cause. The body ages faster than it should. The immune system weakens. Blood pressure rises. Pains appear in places that never hurt before. We are relationally biological beings, at the most fundamental level of our existence. Our nervous system evolved over millions of years to function in a social context, surrounded by other human beings. When you permanently remove that context, you're operating against all that accumulated programming. Solitude isn't just a subjective experience happening in your mind. It's an objective physiological state that exacts a price from your entire body. Even when the mind repeatedly insists everything is fine, the body doesn't lie. It registers the absence of connection as a constant threat. There's a human need we rarely discuss. The need for witnesses to our own existence. You're mistaken if you think this is vanity. The truth is, it's something much more essential. We need people who know our story over time, who remember the significant moments we lived through, who can externally confirm that what we experienced actually happened in the world. Without that external witness, our life narrative starts to fragment. Whoever lives in permanent solitude runs a strange risk, living a life that, for the outside world, never existed. No one remembers your birthday without you having to remind them first. No one notices when you're different than usual. No one validates your achievements or contextualizes your defeats. You gradually become a ghost in your own life story. If you're enjoying this content, check out in the first comment our exclusive ebook, Alchemy and Archetypes. There comes a turning point that few people recognize while it's happening. Solitude stops being a conscious choice. It becomes an incapacity. Social muscles atrophy from complete lack of use. Interactions that were once natural now seem exhausting, demanding energy you no longer have. You're no longer choosing to be alone as a legitimate preference. You've lost the ability to not be alone. What started as a voluntary decision has transformed into a permanent limitation that now defines you. And so I ask you, are you still choosing solitude? Or has it chosen you? The belief that we are complete alone is a form of unconscious arrogance. It prevents us from growing beyond what we already are. Because genuine growth happens in friction with the other, in the friction of interacting with different people, in the productive discomfort of having your certainties questioned by someone who thinks differently. In complete solitude, you can believe you're evolving. but you're just rearranging the same furniture inside the same room, convinced you've moved houses, despite everything you've built around yourself to feel protected. Something inside you still cries out for connection. These are subtle signs you might dismiss as irrelevant. Recurring dreams about people from the past who appear without you having thought about them. Persistent nostalgia for times when you had people around. Disproportionate irritation at the superficiality of other people's relationships. An irritation that hides envy, barely disguised, for the intimacy others manage to share and you cannot. These signs aren't traces of weakness you need to overcome. They're messages from a deep part of you that knows something essential is missing. A part you can consciously ignore, but that keeps sending signals through dreams, unexpected emotions, that feeling of emptiness that appears in the quietest moments. This part that still cries out for connection has a name in psychology. The self. The regulating center of the psyche that constantly seeks the integration of all aspects of the personality. The self doesn't care about the stories you tell yourself about being self-sufficient. It knows the truth you avoid. You were made for connection just as much as you were made for individuality. Denying one pole exclusively in the name of the other isn't evolution. It's amputation of an essential part of who you could become. There's a distinction that needs to be clear. Not all solitude is equal. Sacred solitude is temporary by definition and intentional in its purpose. You withdraw to process significant experiences, to hear your own inner voice, to recover from exhaustions that deserved that care. Then, when it has fulfilled its purpose, you return to the world renewed. The solitude that withers is radically different. Permanent in duration and purely reactive in origin. You didn't withdraw to grow. You hid so you wouldn't suffer. And that temporary hiding place became a permanent residence. The question you need to ask yourself with brutal honesty: which of these two solitudes are you living right now? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, if it causes a restlessness you'd rather not feel, that discomfort is precisely the point. It indicates that a part of you still recognizes something isn't right, that the peace you claim to feel isn't true fulfillment. It's anesthesia that numbs, that the impressive fortress you built isn't a protective sanctuary. It's a cell that imprisons. The way back to the world exists, but it's not the simple path you imagine. It might even seem like being naive again, but it's actually something completely different. You're not going to unlearn what pain taught you. You're not going to open the gates and let just anyone in without discretion. What exists is the possibility of a conscious relationship. The ability to connect with eyes wide open to reality, knowing the risks involved, choosing vulnerability with cultivated discernment. The person you were before the wounds can't come back, and that's a good thing. That person didn't have the tools to protect themselves. But the person you became in solitude isn't the final version either. It's an intermediate stage. A recovery period that extended beyond what's healthy. True maturity isn't an impenetrable wall. It's a functional gate. A gate you control, that you can open and close according to your own judgment, but that you actually open when you find people worthy of entry. True courage isn't in permanently shielding yourself from any possibility of suffering. It's in accepting that every genuine connection involves inherent risk. True love carries the real possibility of loss. Genuine trust includes the concrete possibility of betrayal. True intimacy brings the painful possibility of disappointment. Wanting to eliminate these possibilities is wanting to eliminate the very experience of being alive. I know how hard this is to accept when you carry scars from real wounds, when your body still remembers the last time you trusted and regretted it, when the memory of pain is more vivid than any joy. But consider this. You survived those wounds. They didn't destroy you. You're here, now. What makes you think future wounds would be different? What makes you think you wouldn't survive again? Man, let me ask you something. Do you want to spend the rest of your life proving to yourself that you can handle being alone? The truly strong person isn't the one who doesn't need anyone. That person doesn't exist. What exists is someone who uses the narrative of self-sufficiency to mask the fear of being hurt again. The truly strong person is the one who, deeply knowing the pain of betrayal and disappointment, still chooses to open up. From a mature understanding that the alternative exacts an even greater price. Nietzsche called it amor fati, the unconditional love of one's own fate. Loving not just the pleasant parts of existence, but its totality, including the suffering, Applied to human relationships, it means loving the fate of being human among other humans. Loving that fate with everything it implies. The connections that enrich and those that hurt. The encounters that transform and those that disappoint. The people who stay and those who leave. This isn't weakness of character. It's the highest form of courage. Because anyone can build walls. Anyone can hide from the world. Anyone can declare they don't need anyone and spend their entire life proving that point to themselves. But consciously choosing vulnerability? Opening the gate, knowing there might be pain on the other side? Participating in the human game, even knowing its often cruel rules? This requires strength that very few people develop in a lifetime. The truly dark side of solitude isn't in solitude itself. It's in the illusion it allows you to maintain. The illusion that you're protected when you're only hidden. That you've matured when you've only hardened. That you don't need anyone when you've only stopped admitting how much you do. This illusion erodes you from the inside, while you maintain the facade of someone who has everything under control. The light out of this dark side isn't in denying the pain that brought you here. It's in recognizing that this pain doesn't have to be the final chapter. That wounds can heal without becoming walls. That you can learn from the past without becoming its prisoner. That the choice to connect again, with awareness and discernment, isn't a step backward. It's the next step in a journey that solitude interrupted, but doesn't have to end. The final question I leave with you isn't whether you're strong enough to continue alone indefinitely. That strength you've already proven you have in abundance. The question is another. Are you courageous enough to not need to prove that to anyone anymore? If this content resonated with something inside you, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. Leave your like if you felt some truth was revealed here today. And if you want to go deeper on this journey of self-knowledge, consider joining our membership club, where we explore these themes with even more depth.